Good morning. First full week of school, second morning meeting. I want to welcome everyone, especially the lower mids up there, and I want you to fasten your seatbelts because now let's take a journey. Imagine right now that we are on the Bingham shuttle. We are headed about 250 miles into Earth's orbit. We're going somewhere near the International Space Station. We're looking back at the Earth, gaining a renewed perspective on our lives. We're seeing the big picture. For the next few minutes, first of all, put aside any cell phones. Of course, you wouldn't want to be doing that. Let's put aside our pettiness, our worries, our anxieties, our fears, maybe about some embarrassing moment, maybe about some failure that you've had already, or maybe you're going to have when you fail that first quiz. It happens. Maybe hurt feelings. You didn't make your favorite sports team. You didn't get that significant role in the fall musical. Maybe you're just adjusting to your new dorm. Whatever it is that's bothering you, just for a few moments, let it go. Look at this magnificent Earth, mysterious blue and white planet. Your home, my home. You know, it was 50 years ago, July 21st, I was in the family living room. Had the black lab with me, siblings, my parents, old RCA TV set, and these black and white images were being beamed back from the moon. They're all grainy pictures. And then we saw the lunar module, and we saw like a step ladder and this man in a big, bulky spacesuit coming down the ladder. And we saw him step on the moon. And then we heard him say, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. But actually what he said was, it was crackly. It was one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. And then soon after, Buzz Aldrin came down. It was the most incredible moment. I was 13 years old. 12 people have walked on the moon since 1969, 1972 on 6 Apollo missions. And there have been actually 3 other Apollo missions which went to the moon but didn't land on it. There was Apollo 8, Apollo 10, and then you know the ill-fated mission, Apollo 13. You've seen the Tom Hanks movie. But perhaps the most miraculous of all the missions was the Apollo 8 one, because it was on December 30th, 1968, when NASA released pictures of an image taken on Christmas Eve that shows our home planet. So go Google it later on today, above the moon. It's incredible. And now this picture is called Earthrise. It's legendary. National Geographic said it's a postcard from the first souls to truly leave Earth behind. That was Commander Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders. Other spacecraft had sent views like this before, but this photo was the first one taken outside the Earth's orbit by a human holding a camera. A National Geographic caption under the picture says, Earth's marble beauty leaps from the darkness of space, amplified by the bleak and barren lunar horizon in the foreground. The Earthrise image transformed the way we humans see the Earth, our home in a vast, mysterious universe. So in the past 50 years, there have been cosmonauts and astronauts from over 40 countries go into space, and many men and women from different ethnic, racial, religious, cultural backgrounds, different languages have gone into space. But think about that number. About the same number as people in here today. Fewer than 600 people have been in space. And there are 7.5 billion people on the Earth, and if we go back 50,000 years in modern man, Homo sapien, about 108 billion people have lived on this Earth, but only fewer than 600 have actually had the opportunity to see this precious Earth live from space. So what we've realized in the last 50 years is we need a new story, a guiding myth, a worldview to carry us forth into the future. And we need to rethink what it means to be human. The late Thomas Berry, brilliant, prescient scholar at Fordham University, he was a Jesuit priest, monk. He was an ecologian, he was a theologian, he was a cultural historian. He was a brilliant man, background in both science and religion. And Berry said this back in the early 70s, we need a new story of the universe, one that explores the implications of evolutionary sciences with the world's cultural and spiritual traditions. What he is saying is that without the wisdom of the world's great religious traditions and indigenous, yes, native spiritual knowledge, the scientific, technological, secular world we live in cannot adequately tell the story that needs to be told. Alone, it cannot provide the framework for us to develop the next stage of human civilization. But conversely, without the achievements of modern science and technology, the wisdom gained in the spiritual and cultural traditions of the world over the past millennia will no longer be sufficient or relevant to take us where we need to go, and that's into a promising future. So Apollo 8's Earthrise picture from 50 years ago made us aware that we are in dire need of a new guiding myth, a new guiding story to take us the next step of our evolutionary development. There's an interesting guy, he's called the space philosopher Frank White, graduated from Harvard and Oxford. He coined the term the overview effect during an airplane flight in the 1970s from the east to the west coast. And seeing the Earth from a plane, he decided he was going to write a book about cosmonauts and astronauts and their experiences in space. He called it the overview effect. The book was written in published in 1987, and there's a documentary you could look at on Vimeo too. But the overview effect describes the cognitive shift that takes place in awareness that results from the experience of viewing the Earth from orbit or the moon. He found that with great consistency, this experience profoundly affects space travelers' worldviews, their perceptions of who they are themselves, perceptions of our planet, and their understanding of where we need to go in the future. White found that astronauts know from direct experience what the rest of us only know intellectually. And direct experience is very different than knowing something only conceptually with the intellect. It's like trying to tell somebody who's never eaten ice cream what a chocolate ice cream cone tastes like, or having a mystical experience of some kind and trying to explain it to someone who didn't have it. We need the real experience, and we're getting it sort of when we get these pictures. NASA astronaut Sandra Magnus, in an interview with White, said, "You look out the window, and in my case, I saw the thinness of the atmosphere, and it really hit home. And I thought, wow, this is a fragile ball of life that we're living on." It's hard for you to appreciate that until you're outside of it. Ron Guerin, a space shuttle astronaut, said, "You can see thunderstorms over all the continents. You can see auroras and colors and beauty and motion. The Earth is extremely fragile. The atmosphere is paper thin, protecting us from death, from all the radiation in space. It's a thin line, barely hugging the Earth." Cosmonaut Boris Volynov described the experience as something that reshaped his psyche, that made him more full of life, softer, more kind and patient. The experience, he said, is the key to saving our species and this fragile, beautiful planet. White said many of the astronauts and cosmonauts said the experience of seeing the Earth from space, you completely transcend your ego. And that's what all religion's about anyhow, to transcend this self-centered, self-absorbed, it's all about me. Once we get to view this, we get out of that world. We don't think we're so self-important because we're no more important than the person next to us or around the world. We're all of equal value on this planet. And then you realize, when they transcend their ego, they realize not only in the intellect, but in the heart and the soul, what interconnectedness and interdependence is all about. It's on the gut, the visceral gut level. The American astronaut that's fascinated me the most for a number of years is Edgar Mitchell. He was the sixth person to walk on the moon. Reflecting on his experience of walking on the lunar surface, he said, "You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it." Mitchell said of the experience of looking down on the Earth in a 1974 People profile of he said, "From out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. You want to grab a politician by the scruff of the neck and drag him 250,000 miles out and say, look at that Earth. You know, that would transform his life. But then the truth is, all of us need to be dragged out so we get a different view. As far as changing their politics, most returning astronauts decided to spend more time doing what really mattered to them in life. In fact, many of them left NASA altogether. Edgar Mitchell said that he felt a strong desire to live life to the fullest, to acquire more knowledge, to abandon the economic and financial treadmill. He devoted himself to studying consciousness. In space, he had a sense that the universe is more intelligent than inanimate, because we've inherited this mechanical view of the universe the last few centuries. We're realizing now that the universe is imbued with life and consciousness. So what he did, he had to try and, as a scientist and an engineer, he had to try to articulate what happened to him. So he came back to Earth, he went to a major university, he went through reams of scientific literature to try and understand what happened to him, then religious literature. And someone pointed him in the direction of this text, and he came upon the Sanskrit word samadhi, which yogis tell you means when you're complete absorption in the oneness of all, the universe, complete unity, Brahman, God, call it what you will. He had this, as an engineer, as a scientist, he had this kind of mystical experience. So he goes on to find what's called the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where he could study consciousness. One of the things in heart and science say that we still have no idea what it is. And then another astronaut, Al Bean, took to painting. Another took to writing poetry. Jim Irwin set up a Baptist ministry and went on an expedition to Mount Ararat in search of the remains of Noah's Ark. Another, Charles Duke, became active in missionary work in the prison system. He said, though I've walked on the moon, he said that walking with God would last forever. The shuttle astronaut, Colonel Chris Hadfield, had a sobering experience. Again, like most of his fellow space travelers. He tells the story of how you can see pollution in some of our major cities from space. You can see the Aral Sea, the fourth biggest inland sea, which is about 90% gone. They're working on it in the northern part of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, where it is. But it's still because of agricultural practices and so forth. And then you can see the deforestation. Many pictures were sent home this past August that you probably have seen from the International Space Station showing almost 94,000 fires burning in the Amazon. Seeing the Earth from space for the first time, and this is Apollo 9 astronaut Rusty Schweiker, said he had a deep feeling of responsibility, not just for himself, but for all the people down there, people who were like him, people who were him. The experience brought to mind one of his favorite poems from E.E. Cummings. And when he does his speeches around the country, he would always end with this poem. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, and yes. So the reason I'm speaking to you today about this is not only because it's incredible, it's the 50th anniversary of people walking on the moon, as fascinating as that is, when I saw it on these black and white images in junior high school, but it's because I want you to realize that it's a small world in a vast universe. We live in a small country. We live in a small state. Connecticut's a little state. We live in a small school. Here at Taft, in light of how big the universe is, it's pretty small. But if we can't take care of our own community right here at Taft, take care of one another, how can we take care of beautiful Mother Earth? So let's re-enter Earth's orbit. Let's take the Bingham shuttle back to Taft now, our beautiful school, an aerial view. You know, here are a few things you can do now that you have a sense of the big picture of life. You're not so wrapped up in little things that won't matter so much as you get older. Maintain a perspective on your life. See that big picture. Don't let failures hold you back. You do learn from them and grow. That's the only way we do grow. Really hard challenges and failures. Laugh at your embarrassing moments because you're going to have a lot of them in life. And then move on. Life too short to dwell on such things. Don't hang on to grudges or be petty or engage in gossip or negative or hurtful behavior. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Be compassionate toward each other. If you see a student alone in the hall, looking a little lost, maybe it's an underclass, man or woman, scared, talk to him or her. If you see someone eating alone at a dining table, Stop by, say hello. Support kids on your team or on the stage or in your dorm who are struggling. You can tell. You can just get the body language. Help them. Be open and enthusiastic about meeting new people, particularly those who are different from you. It's cliche, we say it all the time, but we have the world right here. The world is right here at Taft. Interesting people from around the globe, different cultures, food, music, experiences. And by entering a relationship with them, you enrich your life. If a wall is developed in one of your relationships with a roommate, maybe an old friend or a teacher, find ways to take it down. Get help. People will help you unbuild those walls. Come to understand in your heart, not just in your intellect, because education is about educating the heart as much as the intellect. So important, something we've kind of missed in Western culture for a long time. Very important. We need to get back to that. That we are all one. We are all interconnected. And this isn't in a poetic, this isn't in a metaphorical way. This is in a literal, very scientific way. We are literally all one on this earth. We're one family here at Taft, and every one of us was meant to be here. That's why you're sitting in these seats today. Develop a sense of responsibility, like Apollo 9 astronaut Rusty Schweiker did when he saw the Earth for the first time, hanging like that blue and white jewel, deep, dark space. Realize that you need to take care of the Earth, that you are inheriting from older people like me. Be inspired. Be inspired by the Swedish teen Greta Thunberg, who sailed to New York City a few weeks ago to speak to people in our country about anthropogenic climate disruption or climate change. She did that so she wouldn't leave a carbon footprint by flying. And believe because it is absolutely true that the power of one engaged and inspired person can affect tremendous change in the world. Thomas Jefferson said, "One person with courage is a majority." So I have some words here from the poet Archibald MacLeish, another American who, toward the end of his life, when the space program was beginning, he's reflecting on these pictures. And here's what he says. "We no longer see ourselves in the same way as before. The earth now, as it truly is, bright, blue, beautiful in that eternal silence where it floats. Women and men as riders on the earth together, on that bright loveliness in the eternal cold. We are brothers and sisters who know now that we are brothers and sisters." Before you go, I just like to re-emphasize a few points that Mr. Mack mentioned last Thursday about morning meeting. So we gather here, same time as assembly, Tuesday and Thursday, not Wednesday and Saturday. Feels the same, two completely different experiences, both very important to building community. But morning meeting's different, with more serious tone. It's an opportunity for you to stop, to pause, to reflect, to think about who are you? What does it mean to be human? Who are we? Where are we going? What rushing at such a fast pace? Slow down, breathe. You hear the bell begins, get in your seat, slow down, and in the second bell, you warmly welcome whoever's speaking here today. But it's a time, I like to think of it as a time when we reset the compass of our heart so that we can walk in the direction of what? Of justice, of kindness, with humility. It is for us. It's not something to be imposed upon you. So think of that. It's our sacred time together as you walk in here and we look at moral, ethical, spiritual issues through a very broad lens, through the arts, dance, music, poetry. We have scholars, academics, we have scientists, we have historians, we have journalists, and we have seniors speaking and sometimes other students speaking and faculty. So it's a really rich time, and a lot of universities don't even have this experience. So treasure it. It's really important. You guys have been great. Have a wonderful week. And next Thursday, we got Dickie and Maggie. Okay, take care.